Are you ready? Are you prepared for double-digit stat blasting?
I don't know that I am, but I'm going to do my very best.
Okay. All right.
They'll take a data set sorted by something like E or A minus or OBS plus, and then they'll tease out some interesting tidbit, discuss it at length, and analyze it for us in amazing ways. Here's today's Stat Blast.
We're just gonna empty out the Stat Blast archives here. Some of these will be quick. So this one, I'll just go back to June 8th. This one was sent in by listener Sean. And he wrote, yesterday's Guardians-Rangers doubleheader was split 6-3 and 3-6, respectively. How many times has a doubleheader been split with mirrored scores like that? Sometimes I'll hear people say that a split doubleheader almost feels like a waste. It's like you wake up and you have the same record relative to 500 that you did that morning, except you had to play 2 games. I guess it's silly to look at it like that because you got 2 games off the schedule and you're 2 games closer to completion. But maybe it feels unfulfilling if you played 6 or 7 hours of baseball and at the end of it you won one and you lost one, and maybe even more so when the score was the same in each of those and you were on the winning end once and the losing end once. So Ryan's answer, and as usual he has used his RetroSheet database to determine much of this, but it happens in approximately 1% of doubleheaders on record. So 186 times in total. There have been split doubleheaders with mirrored scores. The 5 most recent before this one, the most recent before this one was July 28th, 2021, when the Blue Jays and Red Sox had a 4-1, 1-4 split doubleheader. It happened last June, too, with the Phillies and the Mets and 2-1. And then it happened August 15th, 2020, the Royals at the Twins, 4-2, 2-4. April 20th, 2018, Royals and Tigers, 3-2. And July 16th, 2017, Yankees and Red Sox, 3-zip, zip 3. But before those, it hadn't happened since May of 2008, Toronto and Cleveland, 3-0, 0-3. And before that, you had to go back to April 13th, 2005, the Padres and the Cubs, and they had a pretty extreme one of 8-3. And those 7 are all of the examples this century. But the most extreme mirrored score, would you care to guess the most extreme mirrored score that has actually happened?
Oh boy. Let's see. It makes me think, what do I understand the frequeny of scoring to be?
Yeah.
What is the distribution of scores as I understand it?
That's been a stat blast before, I think, but what hasn't been a stat blast at this point?
I'm going to say 15-1.
Not too far off. 13-4.
Okay, I feel like I you know what? That was a respectable guess.
It was.
I did
in
not
the ballpark,
embarrass my family with that guess.
Yep. St. Louis Browns at Philadelphia A's, June 25th, 1936. There was a 13-4 with each of those teams winning one of them. And I will just say the data for most or all of these stat blasts will be linked, as usual, on the show page, on the podcast page, or in your podcast summary in your podcast player. Okay, that was stat blast number 1.
They'll take a data set sorted by something like E or A minus or OBS plus, and then they'll tease out some interesting tidbit, discuss it at length, and analyze it for us in amazing ways. Here's today's Stat Blast.
Stat blast number 2 comes from Michael. Now, this was sent June 14th, and his email started, I've just noticed something that screams Orioles baseball.
Oh, no.
Yeah, now, on June 14th.
I guess that was, that meant something different than it has historically.
Exactly. Orioles baseball, it's a happier feeling now than it was on June 14th, probably. But Michael wrote, the Orioles starting lineup on that night featured a cleanup hitter with 0 RBI on the season. It was Adley Rutschman, who had 78 plate appearances. And Michael wrote he's had a few extra base hits and has scored some runs, but is 1 for 27 with 0 runs batted in with runners on base. It's the first time this season, no career, which is the same in his case, where he's batted fourth. So Michael said, I have to wonder if this is the latest in a season a player like this, say 50-plus plate appearances or more, has ever been written into a batting lineup in the cleanup spot.
Oh.
Now, Rutschman did not get an RBI that day. He got his first 2 the next day, June 15th, when he was once again batting cleanup. But Ryan looked into this, and this is not a record. So Ryan did it by plate appearances into the season rather than games, since that seems more interesting. If we went by games or dates, he says we might get a September call-up who just happened to get 50 or whatever arbitrary minimum plate appearances before getting an RBI. So he actually went above and beyond, as he often does, and he gave me the most plate appearances entering a game without an RBI on the season for every slot in the order. So the most is for the leadoff spot, which I guess makes some sense because leadoff batters tend to get fewer RBI because they don't have good hitters hitting behind them or ahead of them. So Whitey Witt, June 17th, 1917, he was batting leadoff and he entered that game with 151 total plate appearances. He actually got an RBI that day, but that's the most for any lineup spot entering the game without an RBI. The next most is the number 9 hitter, which, again, I guess makes some sense. And this was recent. Last July 24th, Magneuris Sierra entered batting 9th with 139 plate appearances on the season, no RBI. Then it's the 8th spot. Again, makes some sense. And this was September 23rd, 2016. And this was Caleb Joseph. And I remember that being a thing that year, Caleb Joseph and his RBI-less streak. But he had gone 138 plate appearances without one. Then you have to go to the number 6 slot, and this was Magneuris Sierra again. Last July 22nd, he was in the 6th spot that day, and he had 134 plate appearances. Then we go to the cleanup spot. So this was the original question, and the answer is, yet again, Magneuris Sierra, who last July 19th, he started a game in the cleanup spot, and he had 129 plate appearances entering that day without an RBI. And as we know now, he still had some RBI-less plate appearances to go, but that was the cleanup spot. So that is the answer. It was not Adley Rutschman. It was Magneuris Sierra, most plate appearances entering a season at the cleanup spot with 0 RBI.
Wow.
Then the 7th spot, it was Herb Adams, June 11th, 1950. He was batting 7th, and he had 125 plate appearances without an RBI. Then the 5th spot, Caleb Joseph again. That was September 2nd, 2016. He was batting 5th, and he had 121 plate appearances entering that day with 0 RBI. 6/17/1959, Manny Mota. He was batting 2nd that day, and he had 119 plate appearances without an RBI, so that's the most for a number 2 hitter. And finally, the most for a number 3 hitter. Yet again, it's that man, Magneuris Sierra. Last July 7th, he had 115 plate appearances entering that day, so that is the most for a number 3 hitter without any RBI. So this is not, as far as I can recall, something that we talked about last year with Magneuris Sierra, but he had some RBI issues last year with the Marlins. He ended up with 5 in 225 plate appearances, so he got some eventually, but, yeah, rough. All right, so that was Stat Blast number 2.
They'll take a data set, certify something like ERA- or OBS plus, and then they'll tease out some interesting tidbit, discuss it at length, and analyze it for us in amazing ways. Here's today's Stat Blast.
Stat Blast number 3 comes from Jimmy, Patreon supporter, July 6th. Now, this is interesting. He starts, I'm watching my local newly exciting Orioles in the background while watching. So, see, there's the difference between mid-June and early July. Suddenly, it was not, oh, woe is us, Orioles baseball. It was, look at us and our newly exciting Orioles.
Yeah. real narrative arc there.
Exactly. He writes, yesterday's Orioles broadcast led off with the fact that the Orioles have 4 non-hit walk-off wins, 2 by error, 1 by walk, and 1 by hit by pitch on Monday. According to the broadcast, they lead the league. The Padres and Diamondbacks each had 2, and 11 others had 1. I have to wonder now, how rare is this, and are they on pace for a record in a season? To state it briefly, what's the record for non-hit walk-off wins in a season by a team? Should I now be rooting for non-hit walk-offs? So, Ryan has determined that the record is 6 non-hit walk-off wins in one season, which has happened 5 times since 1916. The 1935 Tigers did it, twice on walks, 3 times on sac flies, which wasn't technically a stat at the time, and once on a ground out. And then the 1977 Dodgers did it on 3 sac flies, 1 walk, 1 passed ball, and 1 ground out. The 1990 Orioles did it on 3 sac flies, 2 walks, 1 error, a throwing error with the bases loaded. And the 1991 Cardinals did it on 2 walks, 1 sac fly, and 3 errors. Lastly, the 2000 Brewers did it on 2 sac flies, 4 errors. And he also notes that the most without a sac fly is 5 non-hit walk-offs, which has happened once by the 1966 White Sox. They had a walk-off, a hit-by-pitch walk-off, a passed ball walk-off, a bases-loaded E5 walk-off, and an E1 walk-off on a bunt, allowing the runner to score from first. That's a wild one.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the record. So the Orioles, I don't know if they have gotten any since then, but they were and probably still are on pace, I suppose, to break the record. So yeah, I guess if you're an Orioles fan, you should probably be rooting for any kind of walk-off win, but especially a non-hit walk-off win, because yes, they are on a somewhat historic pace when it comes to that.
Yeah, geez. And then you're like, which of the ones, if you're an Oriole, I mean, the non-hit ones, like you're like, don't let it be a hit by pitch walk-off win. Like that'd be the worst kind, right? Because
Yes.
then you have to be hit by a pitch. How would you order them, Ben?
In terms of like most
Desirability.
fun or most desirability?
From the player's perspective, though, I guess it's really just like hit by pitch and then everything else, right? Because otherwise, you're like, whatever.
Yeah, I guess I would want to walk just so like I get the walk in my stat
Right.
column. I get an RBI.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
same
yeah.
with a hit by pitch, except you don't have to get hit
Get
by a
hit
ball.
by the pitch, yeah. You
So
get
that's
spared
nice.
that.
Yeah, and then if you have like a pass ball or a wild pitch, like you don't get any credit as the batter, right? So, and maybe like if it's an error, if it's like a ground out, I could see how that might be exciting for fans because it looks like, oh no, like it's the last out, it's just a routine grounder or something, and then nope, it's surprise, we actually win because he threw the ball away. So I could see how that might be maybe the most exciting. Maybe like the sac fly too, just because sometimes that can be a close play, that can be an exciting play, right? Like a walk, not super exciting. A hit by pitch, you don't get any time to anticipate it. It just happens. And if it's a sac fly, depending on how deep it's hit and who's on third, like you get some drama, right? Like there's some suspense. You know, okay, he's got to be going, and there could be a play at the plate, and sometimes it's a photo finish. So that might be the most exciting way to make it happen, I suppose.
Yeah, fair enough. I think I agree.
All right.
They'll take a data set, certify something like ERA- or OBS plus, and then they'll tease out some interesting tidbit, discuss it at length, and analyze it for us in amazing ways. Here's today's Stat Blast.
Number 4. This is from Max, who says, I was at the A's-Astros game on July 9th. Sheldon Noisy came to bat with the bases loaded and 1 out. A passed ball scored Alvis Andrus. Stephen Piscotty and Seth Brown advanced to third and second. The next pitch was wild, scoring Piscotty. Brown took too wide a turn at third and was picked off by Martin Maldonado, emptying the bases. My girlfriend Beth immediately pointed out that Noisy had come to the plate with the bases loaded and had the bases empty before his plate appearance had ended. It's pretty wild, right?
Yeah.
So you had a passed ball, and then you had a wild pitch, and then you had a pickoff, and suddenly he's still at the plate, but the bases are empty now. So he says, what else could even prompt this? 3 balks in a plate appearance, a pickoff gone horribly wrong. Has this ever happened?
So Ryan says, in retrosheet language, Max is asking if there has ever been a bases loaded game state that has become a bases empty game state without a batter event. Max's example required 2 separate events to clear the bases, passed ball and wild pitch. Ryan says there have been 14 times since 1916 that the bases have been cleared in a single event. So it could be a passed ball and an error, or it could be a steal of home and then there's a pickle. It could be a pickoff. I'll put a link online, but there's a long list of things that could happen here. Ryan says there have been 9 times since 1916 that the bases have been cleared on 2 events, not involving the batter. So, for example, Detroit at Philly, July 14th, 1936, there was a wild pitch, and then the runner from third scored, and then the runner from second goes first to third, and then there's a pickoff and an error, and the run scores from third. So a couple of things can happen, and suddenly the bases can be empty. But perhaps most interesting, there have been 2 times that the bases have been cleared on 3 events without involving the batter. So September 10th, 1954, the Reds at the Giants. There was a passed ball. The run scores from third. The runner on second goes to third. The runner on first goes to second. Then there's another passed ball. The runner from third scores. The runner from second goes to third. Then there's either a passed ball or a wild pitch. It wasn't clear which. And the runner was out at home. So just a whole lot of passed balls and or wild pitches and runners scoring or runners being out at home. And I would feel a little bit cheated probably if I were the batter.
Yeah.
It's like, let me drive these guys in. I mean, I guess you're happy to have cleared the bases and scored all those runs, or scored 2 of them at least. But it's like, I didn't do anything. I didn't even get a chance to do anything. And the other example was July 17th, 1977, Minnesota at Oakland. Wild pitch, run scores from third, runner at second goes to third, runner at first goes to second. There's a pickoff and an error on the catcher, it looks like. The runner scores from third, and the runner at second goes to third. And then finally, there was a wild pitch and a run scored from third. So all 3 runs scored. And again, the batter didn't do anything. It just would feel unfulfilling in a way, even though the best outcome you can hope for is that all those runs score. But again, the batter played no part.
That would be really weird. I'd find that disorienting, you know?
Me
And
too.
it's not like if you're a batter, you go up to the plate with the bases empty all the time. I mean, not all the time, but that's not an unusual event for you to go up there and be like, I don't have any of my friends with me. I'm all on my own. But when you start with friends and then you lose them, I'd find that to be disorienting, although I would be really happy about the scoring part.
Right.
Like that would be, and you have to keep getting out of the way. That's the other thing, right?
Yeah, that too.
You have to, you're throwing off your rhythm, I would imagine, because you're like, I got to get out of this guy's way or I'm going to prevent him from scoring and then I'll have no friends but for a different reason.
Yep. Yeah, well, you could take some credit maybe for so intimidating the pitcher that he's just throwing wild pitches left and right. And maybe you were directing traffic, you know, like telling the base runners.
You're doing the arms, you're doing the get down move, you know, I'm doing it, but you can't see, and neither can our listeners, but you can imagine it because you've watched baseball before.
Yeah. So, yeah, you were kind of involved. You played some small part. You were there. There had to be a batter in order for those things to happen. So you were the batter.
Right. It's not that you did nothing. It's that you just did nothing.
Yeah. All right.
We'll take a data set certify something like E-R-A-minus or OBS plus. And then they'll tease out some interesting tidbit, discuss it at length, and analyze it for us in amazing ways. Here's today's Step Blast.
Stat blast number 5 comes from Dennis. This doesn't seem like some kind of esoteric question, so I'm surprised I can't find an obvious answer online. Which manager has managed the most MLB players in their career? The most obvious answer would be Connie Mack, because he's managed almost 2,500 games, more than the second place guy on the list, but he managed at a time when rosters and player pools were smaller, and he managed all but 2 of his 50 seasons with one franchise. Is his sheer volume of games enough to make up for those facts? So, Ryan was able to look this up, and this is players who played in a game since 1901. It does include playoffs, so if you were on a roster and did not get into a game, I think maybe that would not have counted because we don't have roster data going back far enough to do it, really. But here's the top 10 entering 2021. It was Leo DeRocher with 486 players managed. Actually, tie between DeRocher and Terry Francona. So Francona presumably has managed some new players this year and has gone above DeRocher. Then it was Buck Showalter at 506, and he has added quite a few to that total, I would imagine. And then it was Dusty Baker at 519. He's probably added some too, but Buck maybe has leapfrogged him, I would think. I have not counted. Then Bobby Cox, 538. Lou Pinella, 556. Bucky Harris, 563. Bruce Bochy, 588. Joe Torre, 589. And then we get to the top two. Tony La Russa, number 2. He entered the season with 619 players managed, and by Ryan's count, he has had 13 new ones with the White Sox this year, so he's up to 632. But the number 1 is the obvious one, Connie Mack.
Yeah.
He managed 720 players.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, including our former guest, Bobby Shantz, his last living player to be managed by Connie Mack, but he had 720 of them, and I guess that record is safe. Maybe not quite as safe as his games managed record, but unless La Russa, like anyone else but La Russa, might have been let go already, although maybe the White Sox are picking it up and maybe they will win that division after all, we will see. But
maybe.
I don't know, it depends. Like, maybe as long as Jerry Reinsdorf owns that team, Tony La Russa can keep managing if he wants to. So if he's up to 632 now, I don't know how many more seasons he would need to manage to surpass 720, because if you're not changing teams, then most of your players from one year to the next are holdovers, and you're not adding to your count here. But there are just a lot of players used every season in this day and age, so I guess fewer maybe now with some restrictions on how many pitchers you can use and how long they have to be in the minors if you demote them. But yeah, unless La Russa has yet another act in his career where he catches on with another team, which seems unlikely, I guess you can't count him out. But unless he does, then I think Connie Mack's record here is probably safe. But 720 seems to be the tally.
Wow, that's a lot.
That is a lot. All right.
We'll take a data set, certify something like ERA- or OBS plus, and then they'll tease out some interesting tidbit, discuss it at length, and analyze it for us in amazing ways. Here's today's Stat Blast.
Stat Blast number 6.
Oh my gosh, Ben.
Says
They're
from-
going.
Yeah.
They're going.
Decent pace of Stat Blast here.
Yeah.
So Tom says, I often hear a game announcer use the phrase, the pitcher faced the minimum, in an inning or in the game to that point. The phrase is used to signal that one or more batters have reached base but were subsequently eliminated before the inning ended by a double play, a pickoff, a toot blan, or some other mechanism.
Yes.
I don't think a full game of the minimum faced, which isn't a perfect game or a no-hitter, has a name. A no left on base shutout. So, couple of questions from Tom. How often does a no left on base shutout occur? What is the most base runners in a game where the minimum has been faced? And what is the maximum total bases allowed in a no left on base shutout? So, Ryan notes that this one is stat headable. Many of our stat blasts are not, but this one, you can use that coupon code WILD20. You could answer this one yourself. And you just have to set some statistical filters in just such a way to do this. So you have to have 8 or more innings pitched. You have to have 3 batters faced times innings pitched. You can select that in StatHead, and you have to have greater or equal to 1 base runner allowed. So if you do that search, you get 91 results, but 14 didn't finish the game, and 1, Ryan points out, looks like it's probably a data error. Dixie Davis on September 19th, 1920 has a line that seems odd. Ryan says, not sure how you could pitch 9 innings facing 27 but allow a run. That shouldn't be possible. There's no play-by-play for this game, so it's probably a mistake. Heads up, retro sheet, but that leaves 75 times when it does seem to have happened. The most base runners allowed that can be verified with play-by-play is 5, which has happened twice. So April 23rd, 1989, Bob Malacky. Baltimore had 5 base runners, 3 hits, 2 walks, and the outs were on 4 double plays and a caught stealing. Malacky was pitching for the Orioles, that is. And then the second is August 3rd, 1946. Orville Grove pitching for the White Sox. His 5 base runners were on 3 hits, 1 walk, and 1 error, and the outs were on 5 double plays. So Orville Grove was a double play machine that day. The most total bases allowed in one of these starts is 4, which has happened 3 times. Once on May 29th, 2014, Josh Colmenter for the Diamondbacks. He allowed a double, 2 singles, and he got 3 double plays. The hitter who got the double was thrown out, trying to advance to third on the flyout. Then July 25th, 1982, John Candelaria for the Pirates. He gave up 4 singles, and he got 3 double plays and 1 caught stealing. And then June 29th, 1916, Eperixy for Philly. He gave up 4 singles and a walk, and he got 3 double plays and 2 caught stealings. And then one other interesting note, no one has done this while allowing a home run, obviously, or it wouldn't be a shutout, or a triple. Only 3 times has someone allowed a double and done this. Once was that Colementor game, once was August 23rd, 1942, Lon Warnicki for Chicago, and once was June 10th, 1913, Walter Johnson for the Senators did it. So I think you could take some pride in facing the minimum, even if it's, if we don't have a name for that necessarily. Maybe we should have a name for the no left on base shutout. I guess that is Tom's suggestion here, but that's something. I would feel proud about that because especially if you are erasing those runners yourself, like they're not just running into outs, you're getting double plays, or maybe you're picking them off, or you're playing some part in the caught stealing, at least. It's not the conventional way to face the minimum, but hey, however you get those outs and erase those runners, it counts.
Yeah, I feel like that would be a performance that would be written up favorably. People would say you had a good outing if that were the line that you put together, and certainly if that were the result of it. Yeah.
All right, stat blast number 7.
We'll take a data set, certify something like ERA- or OBS plus, and then the tease out some interesting tidbit, discuss it at length, and analyze it for us in amazing ways. Here's today's Stat Blast.
Christian, I was bored at work today watching the Royals play the Tigers when Effectively Wild friend Vinny Pasquantino hit his second career home run off of Michael Pineda. The unusual part is that his first career home run was also off of Michael Pineda. Is this interesting or noteworthy? Is it made more rare by the fact that they were in separate games? Has anyone else done this or done better and gotten their first 3 or 4 or 5 career home runs off of one pitcher?
I just love the idea that, like, so rapidly a guy could be, like, one of the hitters where when a pitcher comes up, he's like, screw that guy.
Yeah, get this guy out of the league, please.
Get him out of here. I hate that guy.
So Ryan says there have been 133 times that a batter's first 2 home runs have come off the same pitcher. Of these 133, 76 players did that in the same game, and 57 did it in separate games. Some interesting examples of separate games. The longest gap between 2 games was just shy of 6 years.
Wow.
Willis Hudley, a pitcher, hit his first career home run against Rube Wahlberg on August 3rd, 1927. He hit his second career home run also against Rube Wahlberg on July 12th, 1933. So he couldn't hit a home run against anyone else, but he had Rube Wahlberg's number.
Rube Wahlberg.
Now, Bronson Arroyo, the pitcher, again, hit his first 2 home runs in his career in his first 2 starts of the 2006 season, his 7th season in the league. That's weird.
Yeah.
And both of those homers were against his starting pitcher opponent, Glendon Rush. Now, Adrian Hauser did almost the exact same thing, hitting his first 2 homers against the same pitcher, Daniel Castano, only a week apart in his 5th season. Hauser was also the most recent player to do this, coming into 2022. Pitcher Marty Patton hit his first and only 2 home runs in his career against Bill Parsons, approximately 3 months apart in 1972. Louis Tiant, yet another pitcher, who, by the way, should maybe be in the Hall of Fame. That is Ryan editorializing there. I'll allow it. Did this almost a year apart against Jim Bouton. Tony Walker was a center fielder who only played 1 season and only hit 2 homers, one in May 1986 and one in July 1986, both against Shane Raleigh, who was an all-star that year for the only time in his career. Tony Walker's probably thinking, if I could have faced only Shane Raleigh, I might have lasted a little longer. And some other notable players who did this: Ernie Banks against Jerry Stanley, Norm Cash against Frank Larry, Carl Crawford against Sean Sedlacek, Joe Medwick against Freddie Fitzsimmons, who has come up on the podcast before. He was out to lunch when necks were handed out. That was something that was said against him, I believe. Red Schoendienst against Bill Voiselle, Archie Vaughn against Bill Walker, and Robin Yount did it also versus Ross Grimsley. Now, only one player ever hit his first 3 homers against the same pitcher.
Oh my gosh.
Connor Jackson, who was a first baseman and left fielder for the Arizona Diamondbacks, hit his first 2 career homers on August 6, 2005, his 6th career game against Rocky starter Jeff Francis. Francis allowed 4 homers that game. Jackson played in 34 more games that season, but did not hit a home run. The next season, 2006, Jackson hit his 3rd homer of his career on April 12th, his 7th game of that season, again against Jeff Francis, still of the Colorado Rockies, although all of those homers were in Arizona, not Colorado. Jackson would eventually hit a 4th homer off of Jeff Francis on September 28th, 2007, this time in Denver, but he had hit 28 homers in between. So that's the most. The first 3 is the most that anyone has ever done it against the same pitcher.
Wow.
All right, that takes us to Stat Blast number 8, I believe, if I haven't lost count. So
We'll take a data set, certify something like ERA- or OBS plus, and then the tease out some interesting tidbit, discuss it at length, and analyze it for us in amazing ways. Here's
Jason noted earlier this year, last night the first MLB player from Palau debuted for the Pirates in Bly Madris. From memory, the Pirates also debuted the first South African player, Gifton Gope, and the first Lithuanian player, Dovydas Neverauskas. And a little research brought up the first U.S. Virgin Islander, if we're counting that as well, Joe Christopher, was a Pirate. I'm guessing this isn't the record, but that got me thinking, what is the record for the franchise that debuted the most countries into MLB?
Cool.
Yeah, so a few caveats from Ryan here. This includes all non-50 U.S. state locations, so it's other countries, but it also includes Puerto Rico, Guam, etc., just like historically in a baseball sense.
Yeah.
Those places have been listed separately, rightly or wrongly, and so if you look up these things on Baseball Reference, they're kind of a separate category, and there are also some places here that may or may not be considered countries, depending on who you ask, but we won't get into the politics of all that. If Baseball Reference listed them, Ryan included them, and he notes that one of those places is at sea. And famously, Ed Perret, who played for Buffalo's Federal League team in 1914, was born in the Atlantic Ocean in 1888, or not in the Atlantic Ocean.
I was going to say probably like on a ship in the Atlantic Ocean, right?
He's not an Atlantean or a merman or anything like.
No, we're going to have to make a new shirt.
Yeah, on the Atlantic Ocean, or more precisely, I suppose, on a ship that was on the Atlantic Ocean. And the other was Frank Thompson, who played for Brooklyn's National Association team in 1875, is the only player born in Portugal. And those are the two countries that had only one player, and they were non-AL or NL. And this is also not counting the Negro Leagues yet. And Ryan notes this is also only counting a debut if it was for a currently operating MLB franchise, but including past incarnations of that franchise if it changed teams or city names, etc. And I will add another caveat, which is that Bly Madris is the first MLB player of Palauan descent, but he was born in Las Vegas, so he doesn't actually show up here because this is just birthplaces. We cannot do descent, unfortunately, via Baseball Reference. But 11 franchises have never debuted a player who was the first to be born in that country. So the Rays, the Mets, the Phillies, somehow, even though the Phillies have been around forever, they've never had one, evidently.
That's surprising to me.
It is, yeah. The Nationals, which includes the Expos, but even so, they haven't. The Brewers, the Royals, the Tigers, also surprising because they go way back. The Angels, the Mariners, the Diamondbacks, and the Rockies. And so if we're going to give you the most ever, it's the Cubs. The Cubs have had 7 players who were the first to be born in a place, according to Baseball Reference. So Chick Pedroes, although apparently his name may actually have been Chick Pedro, was the first Cuban-born player and debuted in 1902. And then we have John Stedronsky, who was the first from the Czech Republic. He debuted in 1879. And John Houseman, first from the Netherlands, debuted in 1894. Skel Roach debuted in 1899. He was from Poland. Iram Bithorn, of course, from Puerto Rico. He is 1942. He played for the Cubs. And then Robin Jennings, first Singapore-born player. He debuted in 1996. So those are the Cubs. And then you have the Yankees, Orioles, Giants, and A's with 5 apiece. The Braves with 4. The Twins, Pirates, and Guardians and Dodgers with 3 apiece. And then you can go down the list. But I will link to that spreadsheet too if you want to see your team or you want to see who counts or doesn't count here according to Baseball Reference. And you can parse it whichever way you want.
Interesting.
Yeah, it would be kind of cool to be the first from your birthplace or birth country. I think that would be a nice honor to have.
I agree.
All right, step list number 9. Gavin, Patreon supporter. In the Braves and Dodgers game on Sunday, this was a little while back, both of the closers ended up blowing the save. As you may know, both of those closers are the all-time saves leaders for the team they were pitching against. So this was Craig Kimbrell and Kenley Jansen. So
cool.
Kimbrell now with the Dodgers, Jansen now with Atlanta, but Kimbrell is the all-time saves leader for the Braves, and Jansen is the all-time saves leader for the Dodgers, and they were each facing the respective team that they are the all-time saves leader of, but they're no longer with that team. So Davin wanted to know, is there any precedent for this?
Yeah.
Has there ever been a situation where both of the all-time saves leaders pitched against the team they held the record with, and subsequently blew the save? So not only is there no precedent for that, by Ryan's count, this is the only time in history that 2 all-time saves leaders faced their former teams in the same game, period.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, and as far as Ryan could tell, and I didn't see any examples of this, but it seems like no one noticed this or pointed this out. There were a lot of people noting that Kimbrell blew the save against the Braves and Jansen blew the save against the Dodgers, but it doesn't seem to have been noticed. The fact that they appeared at all in this game together was unprecedented, so that's kind of cool, kind of a fun fact that that was the first time that that had happened. And some other somewhat fun facts that Ryan noted, the player who has the most appearances against a former former team as that team's all-time saves leader is Tug McGraw. He played for the Mets from 1965 to 1974 and pretty quickly became the saves leader for that franchise, which was young at the time. He then played for the Phillies for 10 years and was the Mets' all-time leader for the entirety of that time, and he faced the Mets 59 times. Second is John Franco, who set the Reds' all-time record in 1989, his last year with that team, and then he played for the Mets through 2004, the same year that Danny Graves passed him to take over the Reds record. But in the meantime, he faced the Reds 45 times. In all, a franchise leader in saves has faced that team 788 times, but two players have never done it in the same game until now. Who knew?
Wow, that's wild.
All right, stat blast number 10. Matt says, Luis Urias just struck out twice in the same inning. This was June 15th, the top of the fifth. And he did so for the second and third outs. How often has one player been responsible for two outs in the same inning? And how often have those both been strikeouts? And how often have those been for the last two outs of the inning? It seems like an incredible feat of failure. And I passed this on to Ryan, and I said it's not that unusual for one player to make two outs in the same inning, but it did seem somewhat unusual to me for those to be the last two outs of the inning, as opposed to, say, the first and third. You'd think that just given the way that batting orders work, that would be more common. So Ryan says no one has ever come to the plate three times in the same inning and gotten all three outs. There have been players who have batted three times, but they haven't made all three outs. That hasn't happened yet. We can add that to the list of things that have not happened in a game that would be kind of cool to see. Not cool for that player. Great. There have been 4,442 times, I suppose, entering the season where a player has been up to bat two times and caused outs both of those times. 4,385 of those 4,442 times, the player got one out in each plate appearance. 57 of those times, the player was in some sense responsible for all three outs because one of the plate appearances was a double play. So that has happened almost 60 times. Of the 4,385 times that the player has made two outs in two plate appearances, 3,904 of them were the first and third outs, which is what I was suspecting. 247 times the player made the first and second outs, and 234 times the player made the second and third outs. So that is pretty uncommon. The most recent examples of a batter getting the second and third out in an inning before this year, I'll just give you the last one. It was Tyrone Taylor last June 28th in the 8th inning. He did that, and actually Rafael Devers and Tommy Edman did it last year too, but that has happened 70 times this century. So to recap, it is not that rare to make two outs in an inning. It is quite rare to be responsible for all three via a double play, and it is pretty rare to make consecutive multiple outs in an inning, either first and second or second and third. All right. And now I have gotten to the end of this. I see that I'm not quite done. I'm almost done. I got another one here. I'll just clean it out. I might as well. I'm just going for the completionist here. And Reddit user, Twitter legend, except this was on Reddit, our Effectively Wild subreddit, r/Effectively Wild, noted one of the recent podcasts discussing all-time strikeout leaders, and specifically Adam Dunn, reminded me of something from when I was in high school. We were Reds fans in Cincinnati, and we would discuss what we had dubbed the Adam Dunn cycle. The Adam Dunn cycle is pretty simple and is obviously composed of four distinct outcomes: strikeout swinging, strikeout looking, walk, and home run. My specific question is if there's a way to look this up and see if Adam Dunn is one of, if not the most prolific players to hit for this made-up Adam Dunn cycle, or if it should actually be named after someone else. Are there any other players who have a unique style that could lend their names to another version of the cycle? Now, Effectively Wild Wiki power user Raymond Chen reminded me that back on episode 1722 through 1725, we discussed some alternate cycles, so you could go back and check some of those out. But the Adam Dunn cycle specifically, now, I guess this is not completely comprehensive because we probably don't have the distinction between looking and swinging strikeout for all of baseball history, although it does go back a bit because we know that Babe Ruth had 8 of them on record, at least. So this is confirmed Adam Dunn cycles. Adam Dunn had 9 of them, and that is not nearly the most, actually. But we have pitch-by-pitch data, at least completely going back to 1988, so I would guess that there's some bias toward recent years, and also because there have just been more strikeouts, and I guess more of all the true outcomes in general. But the Adam Dunn cycle really should be the Jim Thome cycle. So Jim Thome did this 26 times. He had a swing strikeout, a looking strikeout, a walk, and a dinger in the same game. 26 times. No one else has had even half that many confirmed Adam Dunn cycles, or Jim Thome cycles if we are renaming it here. So Curtis Granderson is second with 12. A-Rod had 11, Chris Davis, Mark McGuire, and Justin Upton have 10, and then Dunn is tied at 9 with Bonds, Sammy Sosa, Frank Thomas, and then at 8 you have Carlos Beltran, Bobby Bonds, Jose Canseco, Carlos Delgado, Ryan Howard, Mike Trout, and Babe Ruth, who may have had more in actuality. But yeah, we gotta rename this. I think it's not the Adam Dunn cycle, it's the Jim Thome cycle.
Wow, well, you learn something new every time you do 10 step blasts.
11, actually.
11, oh no.
Wait, oh no.
Wait, isn't it just 10?
I thought it was. I miscounted. That was the 11th. So that was one for every year that the podcast has been in operation.
And one to grow on.
Yeah. Well, no, I guess if we count every year that we have been podcasting, it's 11 years. I guess this is the 10th anniversary. But this podcast has existed in 11 distinct years.
I'm horribly confused.
That was a stat blast about how just if you count from 2012 to 2022. That's
Right.
It's 11
it's like how you're
different
going
years.
into the next year when you have a
Right.
birthday.
Exactly. But I will give you one last to grow on because.
Oh, okay.
I've got another. It's from.
Oh my gosh, Ben, you're out of control.
I know. It's from Clohinks on the Discord group, the Effectively Wild Patreon Discord group. So we're pulling these from all different social media. He said, what's the most consecutive no-hit innings by a single pitcher against a single team?
Oh.
And Ryan reports that it is Neftali Feliz did not allow a hit in his first 19 2/3 innings against the Mariners. That's the
Wow.
record. Yeah. So he gave up no hits in 1 inning in 2009, no hits in 5 2/3 innings in 2010, no hits in 9 1/3 innings in 2011, and no hits in 3 2/3 innings in 2012. Then he finally allowed a hit in the 4th inning. He pitched against the Mariners that year. So he went 19 2/3 without allowing his first hit to the Mariners. And top of the leaderboard, it's mostly relievers, but you got Dazzy Vance second. He went 18 innings hitless against the Phillies. Billy Wagner, 17 2/3 against the Pirates. Chris Bosio against the Red Sox, 16 2/3 innings. John Montefusco, 16 2/3 against the Braves. And then Francisco Cordova with 16 1/3 against the Astros. Now I am finally finished.
My goodness.
Yeah, so that's a dozen stat blasts I guess I ended up giving you there. I think we have exhausted our stat blast material and possibly all of our listeners.
Well, look, I mean, as we have highlighted several times on this podcast, both in terms of ourselves and the guests that we tend to have on, we are complete by nature. That's why we are the way we are. It's unsurprising. Yeah, blasted some stats.
We sure did.